What if I told you that some of the greatest scientific discoveries weren't failures, they were buried? It sounds like a conspiracy theory, but hold on. It's not about fantasy, it's about patterns. Throughout history, whenever an idea threatened established interests or challenged deeply held beliefs, institutional warning signs emerged. Projects disappeared, research was discredited, scientists were silenced. And while the distracted public moved on, silent symptoms of something bigger happening remained hidden in the background. Have you ever noticed how often the signals your body is telling you that something doesn't make sense are ignored? The same logic applies to science. When promising discoveries begin to generate initial symptoms of political, economic, or cultural discomfort, the immediate reflex isn't always to investigate further. Sometimes it's to suppress them. And here's the counterintuitive part. Not every buried idea was necessarily true, but the pattern of burying itself is real. And understanding this pattern can completely change how you view innovation, power, and narrative. Today, you'll see something few people notice: how early warning signs appear before major advancements are stifled. And more importantly, how learning to recognize these silent signs can protect you from repeating the same mistake in your own life. Because if history proves anything, it's that hidden symptoms precede revolutions. The question is, are you paying attention? The Soviet experiment that revived dead organisms. He used to say that history doesn't begin with a scream. It begins with a whisper. In the Soviet Union, scientists conducted an experiment capable of restoring vital functions in organisms considered dead. It sounds like fiction, but it was a cold laboratory, metal, and silence. They observed almost imperceptible warning signs in the cells, tiny electrical impulses, silent signals indicating that death might not be as definitive as previously thought. While many would ignore them as unimportant hidden symptoms, those researchers decided not to. They understood that even the most subtle initial symptoms can hide a gigantic truth. And it's curious. How many times are the signals your body is telling you something dismissed in the same way? The mentor looks at this and pauses strategically. What seems finished isn't always truly over. In the experiment, tissues responded again when stimulated correctly, as if there were early warning signs, simply asking for the right intervention. In real life, the same thing happens. An exhausted person, for example, begins with silent symptoms: constant fatigue, irritability, memory lapses. These are symptoms you shouldn't ignore. If they adjust their sleep, improve their diet, and practice light exercise, often the social organism revives. Don't ignore the body's signals. What seems like an end may just be a system asking for recalibration. Now, the most interesting detail wasn't just the technique, but the fact that it challenged deep-seated beliefs. If something can be restored after what we call death, then how many other accepted truths carry hidden symptoms of error? The Soviet experiment triggered silent alarm bells in the scientific world, but not everyone was prepared for it. Some preferred to treat it as an anomaly. Others realized that there was something bigger there, something that, if explored, would change entire paradigms. And when paradigms are threatened, warning signs begin to appear, not only in bodies, but in institutions. And that's exactly what happened in the next case. The sound weapon of Dr. Gavreau. He took a deep breath before telling this story, because it seems exaggerated. But it isn't. Dr. Vladimir Gavreau, in 1960s France, began investigating strange symptoms in his team: nausea, sudden anxiety, headaches without apparent cause. They were silent symptoms, warning signs that no one could explain. There was no virus, no visible toxin, until they discovered the origin: low-frequency sound vibrations, infrasounds that the human ear doesn't perceive, but the body feels. Signals from the body reacting to something invisible. You see, Sometimes the signals your body is giving you don't come from within, but from the environment. Gavreau realized that those waves could destabilize internal organs. In the laboratory, tests showed that certain frequencies produced intense initial symptoms: disorientation, panic, even physical collapse. It was practically an invisible weapon. Now think about it. How many times have you entered an environment and felt unwell for no clear reason? Don't ignore it. It could be environmental stress, poor lighting, constant noise. A practical example: if you work in a closed office, try adjusting the lighting, reducing continuous noise, taking breaks outdoors. Small changes reduce early warning signs that the body emits in hostile environments. What's most intriguing is that this discovery was quickly shrouded in strategic silence. A technology capable of affecting the human body without leaving physical marks raises many hidden ethical and political concerns. Silent signs began to emerge behind the scenes in the scientific community. The project cooled down. It wasn't officially discarded, just hushed up. And here's the lesson. Not all danger makes noise. Sometimes it vibrates at such a low frequency that only those who pay attention notice. And speaking of technologies that disappear when they start to bother larger interests, wait until you meet the next machine, the cancer-zapping ray machine. He usually smiles slightly when he talks about this story because it begins like so many other medical promises that seem miraculous until they cease to be convenient. In the 1930s, Royal Raymond Rife claimed to have developed a machine capable of destroying cancer cells using specific frequencies of light and energy. According to reports from the time, patients showed significant improvement. Now, look at the pattern. While some celebrated, others began to send out warning signs. The scientific community demanded replicable proof, and rightly so. But at the same time, hidden symptoms of political and economic pressure began to emerge. The mentor always says, when a discovery threatens established structures, silent signs appear behind the scenes. Rife's machine is said to have used frequencies that made cancerous cells vibrate until they disintegrated without affecting healthy cells. Sounds too revolutionary, doesn't it? And here's the practical part. Don't ignore healthy skepticism, but also don't ignore the initial symptoms that something might be being dismissed too quickly. If you follow medical innovations today, observe patterns, read diverse sources, compare clinical studies, follow serious scientific publications like The Lancet or Nature. Knowledge requires discernment. The curious thing is that, after controversies, lawsuits, and institutional pressure, the project was discredited and practically buried. Some called it pseudoscience. Others spoke of sabotage. What matters here is understanding how early warning signs emerge when systems feel threatened. And this applies to your life as well. Sometimes a new idea in your career provokes resistance around you, silent symptoms of collective fear. Don't ignore the signals your body is giving you when something seems promising, but also analyze it rationally. Because if a machine could supposedly eliminate cancer, imagine the impact of a material that never degraded and simply disappeared from the map. The indestructible plastic that vanished. He adjusts his glasses before telling this story, because here the plot becomes almost ironic. In the 1960s, a German chemist developed a type of extremely resistant, practically indestructible plastic. It withstood heat, impact, pressure. It seemed like the perfect solution for a world that lives on disposables. But notice, every solution carries built-in warning signs. A material that doesn't degrade can be useful, or a silent environmental disaster. And here begin the hidden symptoms that almost no one wants to see when the promise of profit is too great. The curious thing is that plastic simply disappeared from the market before it gained global scale. There was no public outcry, just strategic decisions. Some say the production cost was high, others suggest that its durability would drastically reduce consumption, and this, of course, affects entire industries. See how silent signals work. When something threatens the prevailing economic model, initial symptoms of institutional resistance emerge. Don't ignore these patterns. In your own financial life, for example, observe when a sustainable solution is discouraged because it doesn't generate market interest. Sometimes the best investment is the one that solves the problem definitively, even if it doesn't please repeat business systems. Now think about it. We live surrounded by products made to break, wear out, and be replaced. These are early warning signs of an economy based on planned obsolescence. Indestructible plastic has become almost an urban legend. And the question remains, was it unfeasible or inconvenient? Signs that your body is telling you that something doesn't make sense in the modern consumption pattern shouldn't be ignored. Because when materials mysteriously disappear, it's good to pay attention. And speaking of strange disappearances, there was a project involving dolphins that started scientifically and ended, let's say, at the very least uncomfortably. The Dolphin Communication Project that got too weird. He usually lowers his voice a bit when he talks about this project, because here the line between science and strangeness has become too thin. In the 1960s, partially funded by NASA, a group of researchers tried to teach dolphins to communicate in English. The idea was simple in theory. If we want to talk to extraterrestrial intelligences, we first need to understand non-human intelligences here on Earth. But soon, behavioral warning signs began to emerge. The experiment involved intense interaction between humans and dolphins, and the scientific limits began to show silent ethical symptoms. Researcher John C. Lilly believed that dolphins possessed advanced cognitive abilities, and in fact, these animals demonstrate impressive intelligence. However, as the project progressed, hidden emotional symptoms emerged in both the researchers and the animals. Don't ignore this detail. When research begins to generate bodily signals such as extreme exhaustion, intense psychological involvement, or questionable decisions, it's a warning sign. In real life, it's the same. If a professional project begins to encroach on your personal boundaries, generating initial symptoms such as constant anxiety or loss of focus, these are symptoms you shouldn't ignore. The project was eventually shut down, officially due to lack of funding. Unofficially, because things got too strange for the scientific standards of the time. See how silent signals work. When research crosses cultural comfort zones, the pressure increases. And here's the point. Not every discovery is abandoned because it's false. Sometimes it's abandoned because nobody knows how to deal with the implications. And communicating with another species already generates discomfort. Imagine a technology capable of keeping food intact for decades. The ray that kept food fresh for decades. He leans forward as he tells this story, as if revealing something almost no one has noticed. During the Cold War, scientists explored methods of food preservation using controlled ionizing radiation. The technique showed something impressive. Food could remain stable for years, even decades, without significant deterioration. It wasn't fiction, it was laboratory work. But as always, public warning signs arose almost immediately. The word radiation triggers silent symptoms of collective fear, even when applied at safe and monitored levels. From a technical standpoint, radiation can eliminate microorganisms responsible for decomposition, preserving nutrients. Many countries still use this technique discreetly, but look at the pattern. When public perception clashes with science, the hidden symptoms of rejection grow rapidly. Don't ignore this mechanism. In your life, how many effective solutions have you discarded for fear of the wrong word? If someone mentions investing in the stock market, for example, many already feel physical signs like tension and insecurity. But studying fundamentals, reading books like Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor changes the game. The Radiation Preservation Project was never completely buried, but it was shrouded in strategic silence. Silent signs of controversy were enough to dampen the initial enthusiasm. The lesson is clear: not every advance dies from technical failure. Sometimes it dies from narrative. Early signs of social rejection can stifle promising ideas, and when narratives shape realities, the next case becomes even more intriguing because it involves something that defies gravity itself: forgotten anti-gravity technology. He pauses here because when anti-gravity is mentioned, eyes light up and skeptics cross their arms. During the 20th century, several inventors claim to have developed technologies capable of reducing or neutralizing the effects of gravity. Some reports speak of experiments with rotating electromagnetic fields, others mention classified military projects. And as always, warning signs appeared quickly. Lack of transparency, sealed documents, contradictory testimonies, silent symptoms that indicate that something was, at the very least, poorly explained. Now think calmly. If gravity could be manipulated in a practical way, the impact would be absolute. Transportation, energy, space exploration. But here's where the strategic part comes in. When an innovation threatens to reshape entire industries, hidden symptoms of containment emerge. Don't ignore this historical pattern. Look at what happens today with disruptive technologies like solid-state batteries or nuclear fusion. Public enthusiasm followed by prolonged silence. In your own life, how many ideas have you abandoned upon perceiving external resistance? Sometimes bodily signals like persistent intuition are indications that it's worth investigating further. Reports about anti-gravity have never been officially confirmed, but they have also never been completely dismissed. They have remained in this nebulous territory where early warning signs coexist with scientific curiosity. And here's the point that few see. Even if the technology wasn't ready, the mere possibility was already too revolutionary to circulate freely. Initial symptoms of institutional discomfort often arise when paradigms are shaken. And speaking of shaken paradigms, there was a doctor whose discovery could have saved thousands, but he faced an equally strange fate. The doctor who could have saved thousands. He changes his tone here because this story hurts. In the 19th century, the Hungarian physician Ignác Semmelweis noticed something that seemed too simple to be revolutionary. Doctors who washed their hands before delivering babies drastically reduced deaths from puerperal fever. Today, this seems obvious, almost childish. But back then, it was met with fierce resistance. Hospitals were full of silent symptoms, high mortality rates treated as inevitable. The warning signs were there, glaring in the numbers, but nobody wanted to connect the dots. Semmelweis observed patterns, analyzed data, and identified clear early symptoms. Doctors who went directly from the autopsy room to the maternity ward drastically increased infections. He didn't ignore the signals from the institution's collective body. He saw that there were signs your body was telling you when something was wrong, even if the system insisted otherwise. The solution: basic hygiene. Simple, applicable. If you want a practical example for your life today, observe your own processes. If there are symptoms you shouldn't ignore, whether in health, work, or relationships, adjust the simplest habit first. Sometimes revolutionary change begins with a small gesture, but the system reacted badly. Hidden symptoms of professional pride and intellectual resistance emerged. Semmelweis was discredited, isolated, and ended up dying without seeing his discovery fully accepted. Only decades later did germ theory confirm what he had already perceived. See the pattern that runs through all these cases. Early warning signs appear before great truths are accepted. Silent signs always precede historical ruptures. And if you pay attention, you will realize that the world is full of these signs. It's just a matter of deciding whether to ignore them or not. Now let me ask you a sincere question. After all this, do you still believe that every great discovery receives immediate applause? Or are you beginning to realize that often warning signs appear before recognition? The story you saw today isn't just about science. It's about patterns, about how silent symptoms emerge when something threatens established structures, about how revolutionary ideas often generate initial symptoms of rejection before generating acceptance. And here's the most important point. This doesn't just apply to secret laboratories or forgotten projects. It applies to you. How many times have you had an idea, a strong intuition, signals your body is telling you to follow a different path, and ignored them? Don't ignore those signals. Often the greatest breakthroughs in your life begin as something small, almost invisible, like hidden symptoms that you are ready to change. These are symptoms you shouldn't ignore. If history teaches us anything, it's that the world often resists before it evolves. So tell me, are you going to be one more person who ignores the silent signs? Or are you going to start noticing the early warning signs around you, in science, in society, in your own journey? If this video opened your eyes, if it ignited something inside you, then you've already understood the pattern, and the journey is only just beginning. Subscribe to the channel now, turn on notifications, because in the next videos, we're going to continue revealing what almost no one talks about: discoveries, patterns, hidden symptoms of history, and the signs that most people prefer to pretend not to see. And the next time something seems strangely convenient enough to disappear, you'll know to pay attention.